Electricast.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Claudia Miceli, host for this podcast, Let's Talk Soul. I have with me today Denise Miceli, and she's currently in California. Denise, say hello to our audience.
Hello, it's so nice to be here.
All right, so let me introduce you to her. No, her to you, more or less. All right, now, Denise created something called Rock Your Blocks. Her passion and dedication focus on helping people remove blocks to change. Denise is an intuitive life coach and uses the powerful tool of subconscious healing to align behaviors, emotions, and patterns with your authentic self. And I'm going to kick off with that after I finish my introduction. She offers small groups of people and limited individual intuitive life coaching to help you create the change you want to see in your life. When you align your perspective and rewire your subconscious stories and the meanings they have in your life, you can access immediate relief and feel an energy shift, feel more empowered, and think more positively, leading obviously to better results and choices. You make positive shifts in your perspective, changing habits that slowed you down, and you experience your whole life improving to embrace more joy and freedom. She's a passionate guide. Now, I'm going to forego the rest of the presentation with one exception. She has degrees in mental health and leadership and certifications as a certified subconscious practitioner and intuitive life coach. Let's start with that because I said I'm going to start with this. An intuitive coach who uses the powerful tool of subconscious healing. Now, every time I hear subconscious healing, I'm not going to her. I don't want her to tell me what I am trying to hide. All right. Now, first of all, what brought you to do this? Where were you before you started this? And how long have you been doing this?
So I have started my coaching business in 2018
so fairly recent.
Yeah, so fairly new. But part of it came out of my own struggles with patterned emotions and my lifelong interest in spirituality and healing and psychology and kind of melding all of those together. And I had tried a lot of things that, are traditionally done,
like what?
Talk therapy, where you go and just talk about your issues, right? And what I found from that, and I tried different people, I tried group, I tried individual, and I found that it made me more sad. And even though, I mean, because you're dredging up and you're like, okay, I've got that pattern. Okay, I keep choosing, the wrong person or whatever it is. And so it really, and then of course the pandemic hitting was like a big turning point for people as well. And I was already going through sort of midlife changes when that happened. So it was during that time that I started to go kind of on an inner journey, however you want to call that.
I'm going to put you
on pause. A dark night of the soul.
I'm going to put you on pause. Now, when you mention subconscious healing, when I'm here dumbing it down, I'd like, since our audience is varied, please give me your take on what subconscious healing is. And what is the subconscious, first of all?
So the subconscious mind is kind of like the easiest way to describe it. It's kind of like an iCloud of all of your experiences in life.
Okay.
And what I learned, and really what I was leading to with the story, was that
Yeah.
I met someone who does this style of coaching,
Uh-huh.
and we became friends,
Yeah.
one coach to another. And I
Right.
started to get interested in how these tools could change and help me change, and also what the basis was. So the basis is you have this iCloud, right? So
Mm-hmm.
of course, the older you get, the more storage is
Of
getting
course.
filled
Thank
with
God.
memories, with
Yes.
right, we're grateful, but
Mm-hmm.
there's these patterns, and they can become so deep in us that we don't
Yes.
realize that they are affecting our decisions, right? We could make conscious choices
Okay.
and then subconsciously do something that is the opposite because they're
Give me
so
an
ingrained in us.
example of that.
So, so for example, trying to get healthier,
Okay.
trying to eat healthier,
All
right?
right.
So a lot of women are trying to do this, especially as we get older. We're trying to make different choices,
Mm-hmm.
and we get around certain situations, certain people. Maybe it stresses us out a bit, and we kind of, we made this promise to ourselves, and then we go and do the opposite. So it's like you're breaking a promise to yourself because the conscious choice you made is being overridden by this part of you that is really deeply ingrained, which is like, I don't want to upset my friends and say no. And I don't want to be the person that's, picky
Sure.
about my
Sure.
eating in front of my family, whatever it might be. But that's a sort of a people pleasing behavior, which
Mm.
is very common in women that we
Yes.
sort of default to.
Look at Denise. You're sitting here talking to a woman who just finished having a pizza and a beer, and I don't feel sad at all. I don't. I'm pretty happy about
Well,
that.
sure, and no, no judgment to any of that,
Mm-hmm.
because I've been on that journey, and now I'm at a place where I don't, I really allow myself to experience joy if there's a
Sure.
situation that I want to partake in.
Mm-hmm.
But there are people who, they have a medical condition and they
Of course.
have to lower their blood sugar, whatever it is,
Sure.
and they just find that they keep going back to that pattern, and it's like a saboteur
Okay.
almost
Sure.
that
Sure.
is uncovering this need to be approved of, or this expectation
Yes.
from outside of ourselves that
Okay.
overrides what we deeply want
Okay.
inside,
Can
right?
I ask you,
Sure.
do you or have you ever thought about the percentage of women in relation to men that you work with?
I work mostly with women. In
Okay.
fact, the work that I'm doing now in my small group coaching is specifically for
For
women,
women.
because I see, yeah, women going through, and mostly their 40s and up, I would
Okay.
say.
Okay.
Occasionally I get a young person who's
Yes.
like the daughter of,
Okay.
and I help them.
Hmm.
But it's mostly women, I would say 90%.
Okay.
Because we're going through change, whether it's in what we're doing for a
Yes.
living, whether it's relationship, we're moving, right?
Hmm.
There's just transformational change going on in
Hmm.
the world. And if we've got these patterns, particularly people pleasing, and just having trouble making decisions, or we're
Hmm.
prone to sadness,
Yeah.
whatever it might be, and when we are pushed to change, or we feel like we're not happy anymore, that's when all of those those
Hmm.
things kind of come up and get in our face,
Yeah.
and can prevent us
Hmm.
from making those changes, taking risks, facing the fear,
Sure.
and so forth.
Um, I'm asking myself what the difference is between a small groups that you mentioned, and an individual one-on-one. The small group smacks of group dynamics from the 60s in the United States, and they all have a purpose. They're different, and I'm wondering for
Absolutely.
you what it means.
What I love about the small group, especially with women, is that we often, get ourselves into these situations in our lives where sometimes the groups of people that we are around, whether it's family or
Uh-huh.
friends, we sit there and we talk about the same things that aren't working over and over. So we cement the stories even deeper. And so by having a group of women who all have the goal of trying to get more in touch with their intuitive self, more trusting of themselves, there is
Yes.
often, people can come to a meeting
Yeah.
and maybe don't feel like talking that day, but they hear something and it totally resonates with them,
Sure.
whether it's the situation or the emotion or the way that it comes out. And so there's often healing, that is
Yeah.
shared,
Right.
that doesn't necessarily get directed by me. Like I might have an idea
Sure.
or a process that I'm working with that day. I often teach a breath work
Yes.
to help people to calm and soothe the nervous system,
Yeah.
and then we go into the healing. But that is what I have found, and I like to
Yeah.
use something that I learned because I was an educator working on change as well, from a group dynamic. And one of the things that I love to do is, like, they're calling it now hot seat coaching. I don't know if you've heard of it, but
No,
when
I,
you
I
see,
haven't.
okay, okay. So when you see a teachable moment,
Yes.
someone makes a comment and you feel their resistance to
Uh-huh.
change in that comment, or, maybe they make a comment about what someone else said. It's an opportunity to pose a question and to kind of say, hey, can I put you on the hot seat for a moment and give you something to
Ah,
think about?
of
Doesn't
course.
mean they have to answer right away,
Sure.
but it
Sure.
gives them some pause and says,
Yes.
hold on a minute. I don't realize what I'm doing here, but is this a pattern?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
this really how I want to be going forward? And then it gives them something to bring up to work on in
Right.
the subconscious healing, if that makes
You
sense.
just mentioned a key word, one of those words that always sparks my interest. My light shines over my head, a light bulb. Intuition. All right. Now you mentioned
Yes.
as they get more in tune with their intuitive self. More or less, you said that. Now, intuition too, like subconscious tools, are words that are used by many different people. Can you give me your take on intuition?
Absolutely. So, intuition is that inner voice that is always with us, right? And it
Yes.
always seems to know the answer. Even when we are verbally saying, I don't know what to
Yes.
do,
Yeah.
there is something that is in there that is like, go in this direction.
Yeah.
And what the resistance, right? So that voice is there, but depending on our life situation, what maybe traumas we've been through, micro trauma. I tell people you don't have to have been traumatized as a child, because people are like, oh, when you use that T word, the trauma word,
Right.
but it can be something so simple as just feeling left out as a kid.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
maybe you just weren't that, socially apt or whatever it is. And so you're kind of left with this shadow. It's not really who you are. You've proven that you can be out there and be social, but you still have this sense that, like, I'm not good at this. And you say it over and over, right? We say it to our friends. And so then it blocks that voice. And so a lot of the work, I talk about alignment a lot as well. It's getting in touch with that voice on a regular basis
Yes.
is what gives it strength, right? And
Okay.
calming the other voices, right? We can be involved in the world. We
Yes.
can hear other voices and opinions,
Yes.
but that often leads to us having boundaries of our own space.
Okay. Do you find that people who get in touch with their intuitive, their intuition, are undergo specific changes differently from others who aren't there yet? In terms of practical things they do, can you tell me about those practical benefits?
Sure, sure. I can use one particular example. I had someone come to some of my groups, and this is a couple months back. And, she talked about how her work just wasn't fulfilling. It was very stressful, and that she really desired to do work for good and maybe work for a nonprofit. But she had so much fear around the money. She had so much fear
Uh-huh.
about, and this perception from outside of her that I'm not
Right.
going to make a lot of money if I help people.
Right.
And so, through that process of using the tools and, because it's a combination of things. Like I said, we do nervous system, regulation, and we do some journaling. And then, of course, we have that interactive session and we go into the subconscious healing. But through that process over time, she was able to, okay, I'm going to try, because my inner voice is telling me this work I'm doing is crushing my soul.
Okay.
It is not
Okay.
what I want to do anymore. And it's so stressful. And so over time, she was able to make the choice. I'm going to start reaching out. I'm going to start looking at these jobs. I'm going to start applying. And she got in touch with me about 6 months later. She had a new job.
Good.
She was working for a nonprofit.
Yeah.
She left her sales environment and she was so happy. She said, I don't know how
Yeah.
we did
Magic.
it. But what I saw was her listening to that voice and trusting. That's what it is when we're not in touch with that, and we're so wound up by external interactions and external expectations of us, especially as women. Then we either discredit that voice or we just don't listen to it at all. And so we can be in various stages of that. But so a life change like that, or, so that was one specific example with a client where, that was her focus when she came in. She was like, I'm miserable at work. I used to be good at this and love it, but I'm changing. And it, just even admitting that, she was opening to her heart, to her, I call it intuitive heart. But that, is the beginning of you saying, okay, what's not working for me in life and how can I get to it?
Right. Another word, keyword that you mention and comes up on your website, realignment. The effects of subconscious healing and realignment. What is that realignment to what?
So it's I'll use that same example again. When we're trying to make a change and we say, this is my, sort of like health goal.
Right.
And I want to cut down on drinking, let's just say.
Sure.
Right. And, I'm going to allow myself 1 drink a week to start, and I'll see how I feel.
Right.
And so it's taking that and saying, okay, here's my intention, but then I go out and I don't have the strength in the internal sort of fortitude to fight against this people-pleasing behavior that I have.
Right.
And so I go ahead and drink, and then I feel guilty about it. So there's a lack of alignment between the intention, the action, the behavior, and it's linked to these patterns. So one of the ways that the subconscious rewiring is just to create awareness that you can soften those emotions, right? If you did not feel, for example, and this leads back to most of the time when you were younger, if you did not feel seen or heard, and you felt like you had to be a certain way to be seen, heard, loved, then you have that attached to you. And there's a whole school of psychotherapy that's called internal family systems. And it's based on the fact that we have these younger parts of us still trying to work out that stuff, not really understanding, because the subconscious mind, it's just, like I said, all of these things that have happened to you. But it doesn't necessarily go, oh, yeah, that's from when you were 5. It doesn't tell you that that's why you're acting that way. But you develop those people-pleasing behaviors because that part of you is not in alignment with the you that is today.
I see. What I was trying, there's an expression, of course, in Italian. I think, I'm not sure if it's in English. You can bring a horse to the trough, but you can't make him drink. And I was, because realignment is a word that we use in work with spirituality. I'm curious to know, since the cohort that you mentioned is from 40 upwards, and typically for many that's midlife. I'm going to live forever, so for me that doesn't apply.
I love it.
But how much of the issues, how many of the issues they bring can be ascribable to spiritual crises? The end of my life. I'm going to die. What's going to happen?
Sure. Sure. I mean, a lot of that is connected to, being seen differently, right? Because there's perimenopause, there's menopause and postmenopause.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden, the worth that maybe we attach to how we look now changes, right? And
Yeah.
now maybe we don't feel seen anymore. We feel somewhat invisible. So a lot of it is connected to that. And I went through a very stressful time, I think more stressful prior to menopause, not
Yeah.
realizing how my job was really that kind of soul sucking job.
Right.
You hear people say like they're working 60 hours a week and they're,
Hmm.
coming home and crying at night. Like I got to
Yeah.
that point, even though I loved what I did and I was good at it, I had to weigh it out and say, at this stage of my life, to be under this kind of stress like this, there has to be
Yeah.
another way.
I'm laughing because as you talk about perimenopause and all of that, I remember very distinctly my parents immigrated from Italy to the United States into northern New Jersey. And I came over at 5 months. I was born in Italy as well. Now, they, working class family, the 60s, they had 2, 3 jobs, right? After many
Yep.
years, I asked my mother, I have a lot of clients who are going through menopause and they're really having a very tough time. How did you deal with it? Because I didn't realize you were going through all that. And
Stuff.
she
Yeah.
looks at me
Yeah.
and she said, I had so much work. Who had the time to think about menopause? And it made me laugh because, it's very difficult to generalize and talk about class and be class conscious. But oftentimes, when a person has the luxury of thinking and being able to put themselves in a meta position of thinking about their life, that in itself is they're on the road to being cured. Let me ask you a question. What is the most interesting, and in quoted inverted commas, the most interesting case that you have had? Because you also work on a one-to-one basis.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So the most interesting one that I had is a woman, again, in this age
Yeah.
range, that was finding her own spirituality
Yeah.
because she was raised in such a strict, almost cult like spirituality religion
Wow.
that disregarded her as a person, right?
Oh
And I
dear.
had, I had no idea what I was really getting
Dealing
into with
with.
it. But yeah, but we were doing weekly sessions, and these things were coming up in her body,
Oh, in
these
what
parts of
in
her,
what way?
like
Coming up in her body.
she had like pains in her body during the session because we
Uh-huh.
were moving energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so what she uncovered and the work that we did, really drastically took the level of the emotions
Oh,
out of it, and helped her to see that her very young parts that became very defensive at a very young age were
yes.
still so active,
Thank
and
God.
they needed some deep, right? I mean, they were still thinking, okay, she's in danger,
Yes.
she's,
Yes. The inner
not being
child.
protected, she's
Mm-hmm.
not, all of that, and so many of the places that we got to were very, very dark. And
Yeah.
so it was, I guess, acknowledging those, but
Yeah.
then using the healing process to just soften. People think, oh, I've got to get rid of that memory, or I've got
Yeah.
to get rid of that
Mm.
emotion. We're not getting rid of any of
Well, it's
it.
part
It's
of
just
who we
going,
are.
right. It's part of who we are, and it helps define us. But it can also be, I love
Daunting.
Rumi, the
Yeah.
mystic, the quote that
Yes.
he has that says, the hole is where the light comes in.
Yeah.
The parts of us that are broken are the parts of us that can transform us spiritually. And
Mm-hmm.
so for her, she wanted to create a spirituality that didn't have such a negative connotation,
Yeah.
because her being raised in that environment, she had no trust.
Yeah.
All of her trust was gone. She not only did not trust herself, but she couldn't trust anyone of any type of religion.
Oh, I can
It was
imagine.
just,
Can I
an
ask
abusive situation.
if you don't
So,
mind sharing,
sure.
how long did you work with her temporal wise, time wise?
Sure. We worked together, I would say about 4 to 5 months
Okay.
weekly.
Mm-hmm.
And, gradually over time, she became just freer, lighter. She started to work out and
Mm-hmm.
work her body. And she felt like that was helping her to process
Of
as well,
course.
because
Movement.
not everybody, as I'm sure you know, not everybody feels these things physically, but sometimes they do.
Yeah.
Sometimes they really
If they
feel,
don't,
especially as
yeah.
they're old and they're dug up. If they
Mm-hmm.
don't, yes, absolutely, right?
If
What's going to
they
happen?
don't
Something's
feel it, it comes out as disease, some form of disease,
correct. Correct.
unfortunately. Well, I mean, with all of this meat on the fire, on the grill, I'm thinking something is about to give. I mean, you're supposed now, when we draw to the end of the interview, you're going to come out and say, "Oh yeah, I have a book coming out next month."
I
Am I off the
do. I
mark?
actually do. It's hilarious. I actually do. I really wanted to create something that would give, number one, the
Yeah.
background, because
Right.
as you said, this is the question I get the most. I hear
Right.
everything is about subconscious healing now. What does
Right.
it mean? And so I break it down very simply, simple chapters. I literally had a
Well, wait,
seventh
wait.
grader
Let's
read it
start
because I'm like,
one thing at a
yeah,
time. What is it called?
yeah. I'm still working on my
Sure.
title. I'm still working on
Ah.
my title, and I have, yeah, I have a number of different titles, but it's basically a guide to subconscious healing, like how
Okay.
to change your life. So it is, yeah. So it's just short chapters. It gives some of
Uh
the
huh.
tools that I use. It
Mm-hmm.
explains, the basics about subconscious healing, why it's so powerful,
Mm-hmm.
and why it's so easy.
Okay.
We work on bringing up an emotion, and we work on that emotion. It could be a memory, it could be
Mm-hmm.
a pattern, and we just soften it to the point where you have space to find your inner voice, you have space to create something different in your life. And so I really just break down in,
Mm-hmm.
about 100 pages, what does it look like,
Mm-hmm.
and how can you easily and quickly, because once you have this tool, it
Yeah.
it stays with you your whole life, and you can do it yourself. So I teach people how to, you know see a negative emotion, see a negative thought pattern coming in, and how you can speak to yourself using
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
affirmation, using an
Um,
I am statement.
I'm going to ask you
So,
the other end of the spectrum, a case, a client where, unfortunately, despite your efforts, it just didn't work out.
well, I can think of, I think clients who are really deeply into relationship, um, or they just are
I'm sorry.
surrounded
Are
by.
your
It
voice
froze up
blocked
for a
out?
minute. Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
clients who are
Okay. I'll start
deeply,
over. Yeah. So clients who are deeply, you know, I would say people pleasing behaviors are
okay,
deeply ingrained from a very
okay.
young age.
Mm-hmm.
And they're working on this inconsistently.
Yeah,
So,
I see.
they'll come back once a month,
Uh-huh.
or they'll go away for a while and leave it. What I have found in this type of work is that if you work on it week to week, you're
Yeah,
going to see more results, because
of
even
course.
though a major part of the work is subconscious, we start off by connecting with,
Sure.
where were we last time,
Sure.
how did you do with it,
Right.
did you implement what you wanted, so there's the coaching element in there, which is intuitive,
Yeah.
and it's also, it's directed towards them developing their
Mm-hmm.
intuition. And then at the end of the session, we go, okay, what's your plan until next time? What are you going to
Mm-hmm.
try to do
Yeah.
in this situation?
Mm-hmm.
And then, when you come back, let's talk about it. So there's accountability. And I think
Right.
that's where I see the struggle. So in going forward this year and
Yes.
looking at what I want to change with it, I really want to encourage people to get involved in my small group, which is 12 weeks. And it is
Right.
a real
Good.
commitment to
Interesting.
long-standing change.
It's a good
Yeah.
length.
Or,
Mm-hmm.
or be at least willing to do every other week, because I realize people
Okay.
are busy.
Sure.
But anything less than that, I feel like, we lose track of what happened before. And then we're kind of going over the same ground.
Yeah.
So I think it's really the commitment and the accountability that can sometimes get in the way.
Denise, I realized I introduced you as Denise Miceli using the Italian interpretation or pronunciation.
Perfect.
Okay. Well, where is
Yes.
Denise Miceli going on vacation soon? Are you planning that?
Well, this is so funny because I just came back from a month-long
Oh,
vacation
good.
to Central Mexico, which was
Where?
absolutely
To?
wonderful.
To?
Central Mexico,
Oh, how wonderful.
in the mountains, in a lovely old
Oh,
village. I
I'm
mean,
envious. Envious.
it was beautiful. It was so beautiful. And so my next trip, I'm thinking about Amsterdam,
Oh,
perhaps
well,
this summer.
interesting. Have you ever
I
been?
haven't been to,
Ah,
no, I haven't been. And I haven't been to Italy, and I'm Greek and
oh, well,
Italian.
you
So
let
that's
me
on the
know. You
list
write
too.
me when you want to plan your trip. Denise,
I
thank you
would love
so
that.
much for taking the time and coming to talk with us. I really appreciate it. And one thought, do you have one final thought that you'd like to leave our audience with?
I would say that, as women, we need to listen to our inner voice. That inner voice is leading you towards more happiness in your life. So
Good.
listen to it, hold on to it, nurture it.
Amen. Thank you. And we'll see each other again without a doubt. Bye bye.
I'm sure. Bye bye.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to follow Let's Talk Soul podcast on Instagram. Let's Talk Soul podcast is a production of Electricast Media. Our executive producers are Mark Netter and Peter Rafelson. If you like our show and like what you hear, please subscribe and give us a rating wherever you enjoy podcasts. And remember, stay curious, stay inspired, and never stop exploring the depths of your soul.
Have you ever wondered what actually happens in Congress every day? Stay informed on Capitol Hill's daily happenings with a concise, factual summary of the Senate and House of Representatives' activities from the previous session, free from bias, on the Congressional Record Daily Digest podcast. Subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and discover the process from the heart of U.S. politics. The Congressional Record Daily Digest, an Electricast production.
Electricast.
Welcome to Transforming 45, the podcast that celebrates the incredible power of passionate voices. I'm your host, Lisa Boat. Join me in conversation with heart-led humans who share their deeply personal stories of transformation. Transforming 45 is here to uplift, connect, and remind you that it's never too late to write your next chapter. So get ready to be inspired, empowered, and transformed. Join me in this community where through powerful storytelling, we heal and reclaim our inherent magic.
Electricast.